Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories of love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. On a Milan evening, in the top floor office of the Toscani family business headquarters, 36-year-old Garrick gazed at the twinkling city lights through the window, but his thoughts were far away. He had been married to Imogen from Florence for 5 years, and on the surface, it was a perfect marriage. However, lately he found it increasingly difficult to ignore the doubts that troubled him. The phone's ring interrupted his thoughts. It was his father Ambrose calling. "Is the dinner prepared?" Ambrose, though over 70, still had a voice as firm as steel. "Everything is proceeding according to plan, Father," Garrick replied. Tonight was Ambrose's 70th birthday celebration, and all important members of the Toscani family would be attending. "Will Rowan be coming?" Ambrose suddenly asked. Garrick gripped the phone tightly. "Yes, as the head of marketing, he will certainly attend." Rowan was Garrick's distant cousin, a member of a secondary branch of the Toscani family. With his exceptional social skills, he had secured a respectable position in the family business. More importantly, he was Imogen's so-called male best friend, a relationship that had been making Garrick increasingly uneasy lately. Returning home, Garrick found Imogen preparing for the evening in the bedroom. She wore a dark red gown that accentuated the passionate temperament of a Southern woman. "How are the dinner preparations coming along?" Imogen asked while adjusting her earrings. "Everything is ready," Garrick answered, noticing that Imogen's phone screen lit up. She quickly picked it up, glanced at it, then locked it and put it down. This sudden caution with her phone was one of the first signs that aroused his suspicions. The dinner was held at the family's ancient estate near the outskirts of Milan. Garrick stood beside his father Ambrose greeting guests. Ambrose, despite his advanced age, still maintained an upright posture and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. When Rowan arrived, the atmosphere subtly changed. He wore a fashionable deep blue suit, with exaggerated and flamboyant gestures, forming a stark contrast to the restraint of most Toscani family members. Imogen's eyes brightened when she saw Rowan. She quickly went to greet him. They embraced warmly and immediately fell into animated conversation. Halfway through the dinner, Garrick noticed that Imogen and Rowan were alone on the estate's terrace. Through the reflection in the glass door, he could see Rowan occasionally leaning close to Imogen, one hand naturally resting on her shoulder, a gesture uncomfortably familiar. Garrick put down his wine glass and walked toward the terrace. As he approached, Imogen and Rowan quickly moved apart, but he had already captured that moment of intimacy. "Excuse me, Father wants to take a family photo," Garrick said calmly. Imogen nodded, ready to follow her husband back to the hall, while Rowan showed a slight, barely perceptible displeasure. "Give me a few minutes, cousin. I was showing Imogen some important marketing strategies," Rowan said, with a hint of defiance in his tone. Garrick raised an eyebrow. "Marketing strategies? At a family birthday celebration?" "You know, inspiration can strike at any time," Rowan shrugged. "And Imogen has some brilliant suggestions for our new product line." Just before dessert was served, Garrick excused himself, saying he had to take a call, and quietly walked to the estate's surveillance room. On the surveillance screens, he saw Rowan approaching Imogen again, this time with his arm around her waist, his lips almost pressed to her ear. What shocked Garrick even more was that Imogen not only didn't resist, but smiled and leaned toward Rowan, a natural posture that only occurs in intimate relationships. Back at the party, Garrick called Rowan aside, his voice low but firm. "I don't know what's going on between you and my wife, but as a family member, you should know where the boundaries are." Rowan put on a fake expression of surprise. "I don't understand what you're talking about, cousin. Imogen and I are just friends. She sees me as a male best friend, nothing more." "Is that so?" Garrick scoffed. "Then remember, she is first and foremost my wife, a member of the Toscani family. If you have any respect for the family, you should mind your behavior." Rowan's smile disappeared. "Don't be so tense, cousin. Imogen is an adult. She has the right to choose her own friends. Perhaps you should reflect on why she seeks understanding from me, rather than from her husband." These words were like a sword, piercing Garrick's dignity. He was about to counter when he noticed Imogen standing not far away, having obviously heard their conversation. She quickly walked over, her face displeased. "May I know what you're discussing?" Imogen asked, her voice slightly trembling. Nothing, dear. Garrick tried to calm the situation. Just some family matters. No, not family matters, Rowan interjected. Garrick thinks you and I are too close. He's warning me to keep my distance. Imogen's expression changed from confusion to anger. She grabbed Garrick's arm and led him to a corner of the terrace away from the crowd. What are you doing? Imogen demanded, her voice lowered but tone sharp. Why are you treating Rowan like this? I saw you too. Garrick looked directly into her eyes. Not just tonight, but over the past few months. The relationship between you has crossed the boundaries of ordinary friendship. This is absurd. Imogen retorted, but her gaze flickered. Rowan is my male best friend. He's the only one who understands how I feel in this family. When you're immersed in work all day, he's the one who chats with me, who shows me life in Milan. Then why can he put his arm around your waist? Why do you need to hide in corners whispering? Garrick questioned. If you're just ordinary friends, why do you always turn away from me when looking at your phone? Imogen's face changed. A flash of panic crossed her eyes, but was quickly covered by anger. So you've been spying on me? Is this how the Toscani family operates? With suspicion and control towards family members? A barely perceptible flash of guilt crossed Imogen's eyes, but was quickly replaced by anger. You're mistaken. In any case, you must apologize to Rowan. Your accusations have not only hurt him, but also insulted me. Apologize. Garrick looked at her in disbelief. After seeing my wife being so intimate with another man, you're asking me to apologize? Yes, apologize. Imogen insisted, her voice trembling with emotion. You must apologize to him, or we're done. These words hit Garrick's heart like a heavy punch. He stared at his wife, trying to find a hint of hesitation or regret in her eyes, but saw only an unfamiliar determination. Imogen seemed to notice the pain in her husband's eyes, but didn't retract her words, instead adding, I knew him before you, and he's far more important to me. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Garrick felt an unprecedented coldness spreading from his heart throughout his body. He did not angrily rebut, did not question out of control, just silently gazed at her for a few seconds, then turned and left. He walked through the noisy banquet hall, through the inquiring glances, without saying a word, walked to the parking lot, started the car, and drove away. Imogen, standing on the terrace, watched as Garrick's car lights disappeared down the long driveway of the estate, and suddenly felt a surge of unease. She had thought this was just an ordinary argument, that Garrick would eventually compromise, but the calm and resolve in his eyes frightened her for the first time. It was Rowan's voice that interrupted her thoughts. He left? Imogen turned to see Rowan standing not far away, a barely perceptible smile on his face. Yes, he's very angry. Don't worry, Rowan approached her, his hand naturally resting on her shoulder. He'll calm down. Garrick has always been very concerned about appearances. He won't let family matters become complicated. The party continued, but for the core members of the Toscani family, Garrick's departure was like a silent alarm. Ambrose stood by the window, watching his son leave, a flash of understanding in his eyes. That night, Garrick did not return home. He drove to an apartment in the suburbs that belonged to him, which he had purchased before marriage and had kept as a place for occasionally working in peace. Sitting in the darkness, Garrick recalled Imogen's words, each one painful like a knife cut. He's far more important to me. These words were not only a denial of his identity as a husband, but also an insult to the dignity of the Toscani family. The phone kept vibrating, messages from Imogen, from initial questioning to later concern, but none included an apology. Garrick did not reply. He knew that some words, once spoken, can never be taken back. In the early hours of the morning, Garrick made a decision. He dialed his father's private number. I need to see you, father. His voice was calm and firm. I'll wait for you in the study, Ambrose replied briefly. The study was located in the ancestral home of the Toscani family, the symbol of family power. When Garrick entered this familiar space, Ambrose was already sitting in front of the ancient oak desk, a glass of whiskey before him. Tell me what happened. Ambrose gestured for his son to sit down. Garrick did not hide anything, recounting everything from the dinner, including his suspicions, the details he had observed, and those final words from Imogen. His narrative was calm and detailed, without emotional fluctuations, but every word revealed the pain and determination in his heart. After listening, Ambrose remained silent for a long while, his fingers lightly tapping the desk. I understand. He finally spoke, his voice low but firm. The Toscany family never tolerates betrayal, whether in business or in personal matters. I want to divorce her, Garrick said straightforwardly. Ambrose nodded. It's your decision, and it's the right one. But not just that, we need to protect the family's dignity. He picked up the phone and called the family lawyer, despite the late hour. Prepare 2 documents, Ambrose told the person on the other end. One for Rowan, terminating all his positions in the Toscany enterprise. The other prepared divorce papers, ensuring that family interests are maximally protected. When Garrick left the study, dawn was breaking in the east. He knew that this was not just the beginning of a day, but also the start of a new chapter in his life. At that moment, he made his decision. No matter what Imogen said or did, some damage could not be repaired. The next morning, Imogen discovered that Garrick was not at home. When she opened the closet and saw that several of his regular clothes were missing, a sinister premonition washed over her. She tried to text him, call him, but there was no response. He's just angry, she tried to convince herself. He'll calm down in a few days. However, at 10 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. At the door stood Baldwin, the Toscany family lawyer, and an assistant. Madam, I have some documents for you to review. Baldwin's tone was cold and professional. What documents? Imogen asked, her heart racing. Divorce application and property division agreement. Baldwin took out a stack of documents from his briefcase. Given the special circumstances, Mr. Toscany has requested expedited processing. Additionally, according to your prenuptial agreement with Mr. Toscany, you will no longer have the right to use the residence provided by the family. We're giving you 3 days to arrange your relocation. Imogen felt dizzy. This is too sudden. I need to talk to Garrick. This must be a misunderstanding. I'm afraid it's not a misunderstanding, madam, Baldwin said calmly. The prenuptial agreement has specific clauses. I believe you signed and confirmed them at the time. After Baldwin and his assistant left, Imogen immediately called Rowan. The phone rang for a long time with no answer. She tried several more times until finally, Rowan answered. What is it? Rowan's voice was noticeably colder than usual. Garrick wants to divorce me. The family lawyer came this morning to deliver the documents. They want me to move out in 3 days. Imogen exclaimed, almost on the verge of collapse. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Rowan sighed. I'm sorry to hear that, but I have some trouble to deal with right now. This morning I was informed that my position at the company has been terminated. Ambrose has ordered that not only have I lost my job, but I'm also forbidden from entering any Toscany family property. That's impossible. Imogen protested. Garrick wouldn't do that. It must be his father's decision. It doesn't matter whose decision it is, Rowan scoffed. The result is the same. Listen, Imogen, we both have troubles to deal with now. I suggest you contact your family. See if you can temporarily go back to Florence for a while. Wait, Imogen's voice trembled. Didn't we agree? If problems arose, we would face them together. Didn't you say before that if I decided to leave Garrick, you would support me? Silence again on the other end. Then Rowan's soft laugh. Imogen, don't be naive. Between us, there was only mutual attraction, mutual comfort. But I never thought about taking on any responsibility. Now that I've lost everything in the Toscany family, you no longer have any value to me. No value. Imogen felt a ringing in her ears, as if she'd been doused with a bucket of ice water. So you approached me only because I was Garrick's wife? Because I could facilitate things for you within the family? Don't put it that way. We used each other, Rowan answered, with a tone of impatience. You needed to escape a boring marriage, and I needed to gain more influence in the family. Our plan just went wrong, and now I have to readjust my direction. Over the next 2 days, Imogen tried every possible method to contact Garrick, but to no avail. Her calls were rejected, her messages unread, and even when she personally went to the Toscany Enterprise headquarters, she was politely but firmly turned away. Within the family, they had evidently reached a consensus. Imogen Toscany was no longer welcome. In conversations with former colleagues and friends, Imogen realized that the Toscany family's influence was more extensive than she had imagined. Her once proud public relations industry contacts now barely dared to communicate with her. Those social circles that once competed to invite her to events now ignored her pleas for help. What she faced was not just a divorce, but a social death. With the moving deadline approaching, Imogen was forced to contact her parents in Florence, requesting to temporarily return home. This request itself was a humiliation. However, as she was packing, a sudden thought flashed. Perhaps there was still hope. If she could directly confront Garrick, sincerely apologize, maybe she could salvage this marriage. Through an old employee of the Toscany enterprise, Imogen learned that Garrick was now living in his apartment in the suburbs. On the day before the final moving deadline, she drove there, determined to make one last effort. Imogen lingered in front of Garrick's apartment door for a long time, finally mustering the courage to ring the doorbell. There was no response. She continued pressing, while knocking on the door, hoping to draw attention from whoever was inside. "Garrick, I know you're in there. Please open the door. We need to talk," Imogen shouted at the door, her voice breaking with tears. Still no response. But Imogen noticed that the surveillance camera beside the door was focused on her, the red light blinking, indicating someone was watching. "Garrick, please. I was wrong. I was really wrong." Imogen knelt in front of the door, tears flowing uncontrollably. "I shouldn't have said that. Rowan means nothing to me. He was just using me to get close to the family core. I've always loved you." Several minutes passed. The door remained closed. Imogen's knees ached from kneeling on the hard floor, but she didn't care. At that moment, she was willing to pay any price to regain what she had lost. "Garrick, what am I going to do without you? My work, my friends, my life, everything is in Milan. I can't go back to Florence. There are no opportunities there. Please give me a chance. We can start over." Just when Imogen was about to give up, the apartment door opened. Garrick stood there, his expression calm but his eyes cold. "Get up," Garrick said, his voice low. "The neighbors will see." Imogen quickly stood up, wiped away her tears, hoping this was the beginning of a reconciliation. "Thank you for seeing me. Can we talk?" Garrick stepped aside to let her enter the apartment, but without any friendly gesture. "What do you want to say?" Garrick asked, standing in the center of the living room, maintaining distance. Imogen took a deep breath. "I apologize for what I said. That night, I was too emotional and said things I shouldn't have. The relationship between Rowan and me was indeed somewhat complicated, but not as serious as you think." "Really?" Garrick questioned, his gaze cold. "Then why did you say he was more important than me? Why were you intimately whispering in a corner of the terrace? Why could he put his arm around your waist, and you showed no resistance?" Imogen lowered her head, knowing she could no longer deny. "I felt lonely, Garrick. You're always busy with work, with family affairs, and I've always been an outsider in this family. Rowan understood me. He chatted with me, showed me life in Milan, made me feel not so alone. So you chose to betray?" Garrick's voice was calm, but each word cut like a knife. "You know, in the Toscany family, loyalty and respect are the most basic values. You didn't just betray me, you insulted my family. I know I made a big mistake." Imogen's voice trembled. "But it's not just my fault. You have responsibility too. You never cared about my feelings, never understood my struggle in this strange environment. I just needed to be understood, to be noticed. So it's my fault." Garrick let out a cold laugh. "Because I'm busy with work, you have reason to develop an inappropriate relationship? Because I respect family traditions, you can betray marriage vows." Imogen felt a wave of frustration. Her explanations seemed to only make the situation worse. "No, I'm not shirking responsibility. I just hope you understand that with Rowan and me, initially, it was just seeking emotional support. Later things got out of control. I admit that was my mistake. But I hope we can have a chance to start over." Garrick was silent for a moment, then walked to the window, turning his back to her. "You know what? What hurt me the most wasn't your relationship with Rowan, but that phrase, 'he's far more important to me.' At that moment, I realized my position in your heart and understood what our marriage meant to you. That was just said in anger." Imogen explained anxiously. "I was angry, wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean it." "The problem, Imogen," Garrick turned to face her, determination in his eyes, "is that there are words that once spoken cannot be taken back. There are damages that once caused cannot be repaired. I will not forgive betrayal." Imogen felt hope fading. "So you really want to divorce me? Can't you give us a chance?" "No," Garrick shook his head. "Not just because of those words or those actions. It's because your choices revealed a fact. Our values are completely different. You don't respect me, don't respect my family, don't respect our marriage either. The divorce papers are already prepared. My lawyer will contact you to discuss the details. And what about me? Imogen's voice was filled with desperation. Where will I go? My work, my life are here. You know the influence the Toscani family has in Milan. I can't find work anymore. This is the result of your own choices, Garrick replied, with no compassion in his tone. If you really cared about these things, you wouldn't have made those decisions. Imogen finally realized that no matter what she said or did, Garrick's decision was irreversible. The Toscani family's sense of determination and honor would not allow him to accept this kind of betrayal, and she had completely lost his trust and love. I understand, Imogen finally said, her voice weak. But please remember, whatever happens, I once truly loved you. I just lost my way later. Garrick did not respond, simply walked to the door, indicating the conversation was over. I wish you well, Imogen. Imogen walked out of the apartment, feeling an unprecedented emptiness and fear. She knew that from today, she would lose everything: husband, family, social status, even the basis for survival in Milan. And all this originated from a moment of weakness and wrong choices. 3 months later, on a rainy afternoon, Imogen stood by the window of her small apartment in Florence, watching people hurrying by below. The divorce process had been completed. According to the prenuptial agreement, she received minimal compensation, far from enough to continue living in Milan. Due to the Toscani family's influence in the Italian business world, she encountered obstacles everywhere when looking for work in the north, finally being forced to return to her hometown. Returning to Florence felt both familiar and strange. 5 years of luxury living had made her unable to adapt to the ordinariness and constraints of her hometown. Although her parents didn't blame her, the disappointment and confusion in their eyes added pressure. In this apartment of barely 80 square meters, Imogen was forced to re-examine her life choices and future direction. In the first few weeks, she often thought of Garrick, recalled those times spent together. Although she tried to blame his workaholic nature and the constraints of family traditions, deep in her heart, she knew the truth. She had been deceived by Rowan's sweet words and apparent care, allowing herself to fall into a game destined for failure. And when the crisis came, Rowan abandoned her without hesitation, forcing her to face her own stupidity and gullibility. At the same time, she also frequently checked news about the Toscani family. Through social media and business news, she learned that Garrick, with his father's support, had taken on more responsibilities in the family business. These news items stirred mixed feelings in Imogen. She was glad for his success, but regretted everything she had lost. As for Rowan, his situation was even worse. After being expelled from the Toscani family, he not only lost his job, but was completely blocked by the family's business network. Any company with business relations with the Toscani family refused to hire him. Through some former colleagues in Milan, Imogen learned that Rowan finally left Italy, reportedly going to some South American country, trying to start over. Imogen tried to rebuild her life in Florence. Thanks to the experience accumulated in Milan, she found a job at a small public relations company. The salary was far from what it was before, but enough to maintain a basic living. However, every time she passed those luxury shops, saw those brand-name clothes and jewelry that were once easily attainable, she felt a wave of loss and regret. What she found even harder to accept was the change in her social circle. Once, she was a member of Milan's high society, attending high-end dinners and charity events. Now, she was back to square one, even worse than square one, because she carried the label of a failed marriage. Her former friends and colleagues seemed to have quickly forgotten her existence. Interactions and invitations on social media plummeted. This social isolation made her deeply understand the price of betrayal. A year later, Imogen's public relations company received an important project, providing services for an exhibition by an international fashion brand in Florence. However, when she saw the client list, her heart almost stopped. The Toscani family was one of the main sponsors of this exhibition. Despite her inner unease, Imogen decided to remain on the project. In a key meeting, while she was presenting the promotion strategy to the team, Garrick walked in. Time seemed to freeze. After more than a year of separation, Garrick appeared more mature and confident than before, impeccably suited, with elegant gestures. He clearly hadn't expected to encounter Imogen there. Stopping at the door, his gaze meeting hers. After the meeting, Garrick briefly spoke with her, politely expressing his hope that the collaboration would be smooth and assuring that he would not affect her professional development for personal reasons. This professional but distant attitude made Imogen feel both relieved and a little downhearted. On the eve of the exhibition opening, a familiar figure appeared in Florence. Rowan had returned to Italy. He suddenly appeared at Imogen's office door, trying to re-establish contact, even suggesting they could join forces against the Toscani family. Imogen firmly rejected him, making it clear that she had learned her lesson from her mistakes. On the day of the exhibition opening, Rowan showed up uninvited, attempting to approach Garrick. Imogen discovered this in time and prevented a possible conflict. Garrick expressed brief thanks for her intervention, then they each returned to their work. Days later, Rowan was taken to the hospital for an overdose of medications. In his hotel room, numerous documents and photographs about the Toscani family were found. He was evidently planning some sort of revenge or blackmail. This news quickly spread through Italian high society circles. When Rowan recovered and left the hospital, he faced not only social contempt but possible legal action. Eventually, he was forced to leave Italy again, this time permanently. This series of events made Imogen even more determined to rebuild her life. Her public relations company gained recognition for successfully organizing the exhibition, and new clients came flocking. She bought a small but comfortable apartment, began cultivating new interests, and establishing new social circles. Although all this didn't compare to her life in Milan, these were her own achievements, without depending on anyone. Half a year later, Imogen received news from Garrick again. The Toscani family was planning to open a new boutique hotel in Florence, and he hoped her company would handle the public relations for the opening. This was an important professional recognition, showing that Garrick truly, as he had said, would not let personal history influence professional decisions. During the project collaboration, Imogen and Garrick maintained a professional and distant relationship. They occasionally met at meetings, greeted each other, then each returned to their work. No private conversations, no reminiscing about the past, just mutually respectful professional interactions. For Garrick, life had moved forward. His position in the family business had become more consolidated, and he was even starting to consider a new marriage. It was said that he maintained a close relationship with a lady from another northern family, and the two families had already begun discussing a possible marriage. For Imogen, the lessons of the past had made her more cautious and independent. She no longer sought external validation and dependency, but focused on her own growth and career. The price of betrayal was painful, but also taught her life's most important lesson. True value lies not in social status or material wealth, but in self-respect and integrity. The life trajectories of both had completely separated, each developing in different directions. The only connection that remained between them was the occasional professional intersections, and those memories now sealed away. If this story has resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.